Hi, everybody. For the next 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you the story of 8 years of progress toward open data in New Orleans. Like many stories in our city, this one starts with Hurricane Katrina. For context, back in November of 2005, a researcher with the Brookings Institution commented that it had been easier getting data about the rebuilding of Iraq than it was New Orleans. One of the highest value data sets after the storm was what we call the parcel layer, basically the little rectangles of land that people own. At that time, I was working for a local data intermediary, and we tried to get this data from City Hall with no success. And organizations would come to us asking if we had the parcel layer, and I'd tell them to give City Hall a try, and they'd inevitably come back and say they didn't have any luck either. At that point, I'd say, well, I know a guy who might be able to hook you up. That guy worked for a local nonprofit. He had gotten the parcel layer from someone at a firm with a city contract to do one of the many community planning processes after the storm. It's not surprising that in those days of data scarcity, a bootleg copy of the parcel layer emerged. Anyway, this guy, he would supply neighborhood associations, community development corporations, for-profits, nonprofits with the parcel layer. Even federal agencies like FEMA were coming to him, this private citizen, asking for the city's data. Pretty soon, neighborhoods all over the city had their own versions of the parcel layer. Some were using it in high-tech ways to analyze neighborhood recovery. Some were using it in low-tech ways to facilitate data collection. By the time I came to city government in 2010, and mind you, this is 5 years after the storm, our department was still averaging 1 request a week for this parcel layer. This parcel layer was undoubtedly what's known as a high-value data set. As we started to dig around, we learned that we'd been saying no to releasing this data for so long that nobody in City Hall could remember why we weren't releasing it in the first place. So we made the case to leadership. We uploaded the data to box.net, it was the only thing we had, and announced it by email to a few dozen citizens. Now, it's important to mention that this parcel layer is also an anomaly. It's what we call low-hanging fruit. The data existed, it was in pretty good shape, and responsibility for maintaining it fell squarely within my department. Nowadays, we use the Socrata Open Data Platform. Uploading the data into Socrata is technically very easy, but getting it ready for prime time in the first place is not. Today, we have about 50 hard-earned data sets in data.nola.gov. It takes significant time and resources to set up solid data supply chains. The real champions of open data are the workers in City Hall who have had to change the fundamental way they do their jobs. We have commitment to data quality and transparency from code inspectors to attorneys to planners and managers. One thing all of these guys have in common is that their data goes into enterprise applications. Some of these systems are very old. Some are new, and some even have international communities of users. But they're all enterprise, which brings me to what I really wanted to talk about today, the tension between enterprise and lightweight apps. Blight Status, our Code for America app, depends on the enterprise system Llama for its data supply chain. And we're talking with Civic Insight, the startup that emerged from the New Orleans Fellowship, about making a tighter connection to our enterprise GIS as well. What we've learned is that the more important this app Blight Status becomes, the tighter we need to integrate it with our enterprise systems. And Blight Status is incredibly important. Now citizens spend less time tracking the status of a blighted property and can focus on more important things like abatement strategy or giving input at public hearings. In fact, just last week, a woman at a public meeting handed me this printout from Blight Status. She is pressuring us the old-fashioned way in writing to make faster progress on this particular case. We hear over and over again from the public that they love how simple, beautiful, and easy to use Blight Status is. That's the product Blight Status. But the process of working with Code for America to design this app was nothing short of transformative for the city. Before this collaboration, our enterprise app could not give the status of a blighted property without digging into multiple screens, and even then you weren't sure that you got to the truth. You can imagine that if people inside City Hall have a hard time getting visibility on properties in the blight pipeline, cases might fall through the cracks, and it would be difficult to optimize our internal operations. The really exciting outcome from this collaboration is that after we built the Lightweight app, we went back into our enterprise system, and we restructured the data interface so the code enforcement staff now all have visibility into that true, unambiguous status also. Beyond transparency, because we considered the Lightweight and the enterprise apps in tandem, now the entire blight eradication process is more efficient, effective, and equitable.